During the night of June 26, 27, 1862, Major General McClellan's Army of the Potomac forms a new defensive line outside Richmond in the shape of a semicircle, with Brigadier General Fitzjohn Porter's 5th Corps anchoring McClellan's far right flank above the Chickahominy River around Bosun's Creek and Gaines Mill. Below the river and close to Grapevine Bridge and McClellan's Army headquarters at the Dr. Trent House is Brigadier General William B. Franklin's 6th Corps. Below Franklin and posted around Fair Oak Station and the 9 Mile Road is Edwin V. Sumner's 2nd Corps. Samuel P. Heintzelman's 3rd Corps holds the Army's center, occupying defensive entrenchments around Seven Pines on the Williamsburg Stage Road. Finally, Brigadier General Erasmus D. Keyes' 4th Corps holds McClellan's far left flank in front of White Oak Swamp, with Keyes' headquarters located at Anderson's Mill. Although Porter's 5th Corps holds the extreme right of the Army of the Potomac, it is Franklin's 6th Corps that holds the right flank of the Army's defensive line south of the Chickahominy River. While General Lee prepares his army in Northern Virginia for another concentrated attack on Porter following the Confederate repulse at Mechanicsville on the 26th, McClellan is paranoid that Lee will also attack below the Chickahominy against Franklin's 6th Corps. And so, overnight from the 26th to the 27th, Franklin's men begin entrenching themselves and preparing defensive positions for any possible attack the next day. Brigadier General William F. Baldy Smith's 2nd Division holds the 6th Corps' right flank just south of the Chickahominy. While crickets chirp and frogs croak throughout the night, Baldy Smith's men build sturdy breastworks and fortifications around the property of Samuel Golding's farm. Abattis, rifle pits, and shallow earthworks are placed across a large grass field known as Golding's Plain. When dawn breaks on the morning of Friday the 27th, Smith's division is well entrenched and ready for any attack that might come their way. Beyond Golding's Plain, in a steep ravine with a shallow creek running off the Chickahominy, are the Confederates of Brigadier General David R. Jones' division, part of Major General John B. Magruder's command. D.R. Jones' division contains 2 Georgia infantry brigades under the command of Brigadier General Robert Toombs and Colonel George T. Anderson, respectively, and an artillery battalion led by Major John J. Garnett. These units are in position in the vicinity of a grassy rise known as Garnett's Hill, situated on the farm property of a Mr. James Garnett. Colonel G.T. Anderson's brigade occupies strong earthworks around Mrs. Price's house near the New Bridge Road and runoff streams of the Chickahominy. Brigadier General Toombs Brigade is stationed in the rear and east of Mr. James Garnett's house. These brigades have held these positions since June 3rd, and Mrs. Price's house is strongly fortified, acting as a command post for Brigadier General Jones. The house has been under constant harassing fire from Federal artillery batteries to the east. At 8 a.m. on Friday, June 27th, Baldy Smith orders Brigadier General Winfield Scott Hancock's 1st Brigade to move up to the forward lines overlooking Garnett's house and relieve General William T. H. Brooks' 2nd Brigade, nicknamed the 1st Vermont Brigade. Captain Romaine B. Ayers' Battery F, 5th U.S. Artillery, and 5 other batteries from Lieutenant Colonel George W. Getty's 2nd Brigade of the Army of the Potomac's Artillery Reserve are also moved up to the front with Hancock's men as far as Golding's Plain, preparatory to an advance. Hancock is ordered to complete the earthworks and hold them at all hazards. Smith also tells Hancock to hold the skirt of woods to the right of the works, directly in front of James Garnett's house, his right flank resting on the valley of the Chickahominy. Around 9 a.m. at Mrs. Price's house, General Jones notices that the Federals are pushing their picket line into the wheat field in front of Garnett's house, and they are beginning to construct a new line of rifle pits extending from the old chimneys towards the gatepost in the far corner of the field. He spots on the enemy's right a strong line of pickets thrown out a few yards in advance of regiments drawn up in line of battle immediately in front of Toombs' right flank, posted in the ravine east of the Garnett house. These Union pickets are from companies of Colonel Hiram Burnham's 6th Maine Regiment. David R. Jones informs Major General Magruder of the Union dispositions to his front at 10 a.m. Reacting quickly, Magruder orders forward 2 12-pounder howitzers from the 1st section of Captain James S. Brown's battery, the Wise Virginia Artillery, along with the 7th Georgia as a support, towards the overseer cabin along the New Bridge Road, located in between the Dr. and Mr. James Garnett houses. Meanwhile, the 9th and 11th Georgia Regiments accompany Captain George V. Moody's battery, the Madison, Louisiana Artillery, and they are posted on the left in the 9 Mile Road. Just after 10 o'clock in the morning, these artillery units open fire on the Union works around Golding's Plain, marking the start of the Battle of Garnett's and Golding's Farm. Under bombardment, Brigadier General Hancock immediately makes preparations to defend his rifle pits after spotting a column of infantry from Toombs Brigade within musket shot distance from his left flank. However, General Smith directs Hancock to abandon his 4 rifle pits except for the pickets of the 6th Maine, and to confine his operations to defending the skirt of woods to his right. At 10:30, Brown's and Moody's batteries begin shifting their fire towards Smith's 2nd Division camp. A few shots pass through the skirt of woods occupied by Hancock's brigade, which suffers a few losses in the barrage. The rest of Brown's battery, the 2nd section of 2 smoothbore 6-pounder field guns, along with Lane's battery of 6 12-pounder howitzers, the Dabney Virginia artillery, are sent to Captain Brown's assistance, and the fire is kept up vigorously by the Confederate artillerymen for another 20 minutes. Soon, Union batteries across the field answer the barrage with counter-battery fire. At 10:50, the rebel batteries are withdrawn on the orders of Lieutenant Colonel Stephen D. Lee, the artillery battalion commander for Magruder's division. At noon, from their headquarters at Mrs. Price's house, Generals Magruder and Jones spot the distant columns of Longstreet's division across the Chickahominy preparing to make their attack on Porter's 5th Corps around Bosun's Creek and atop Turkey Hill. Magruder informs Jones of his intention to fill the enemy along his entire front, and he directs Jones to issue the necessary commands to his division. Just as the Confederates and General Lee's Army in Northern Virginia are beginning to rally for their final attack on Porter's 5th Corps during the final hours of the Battle of Gaines' Mill, another action is about to unfold south of the Chickahominy at Garnett's and Golding's farms. As the time draws near to 7 p.m. and the not-too-distant roar of cannon and gunfire around Gaines' Mill begins to intensify with the battle reaching its climax, Brigadier General Toombs and Colonel Anderson receive orders from Generals Magruder and Jones to fill the enemy around Golding's Farm. Magruder wants Toombs to conduct a reconnaissance in force to test the enemy's strength south of the river, but Toombs will take his orders to heart and begin preparing for an attack on the Federals to his front. Shortly before sunset, Lane's and Warhawk's batteries, stationed near the overseer cabin, open a brisk fire on the Federals for some 10 minutes, drawing upon them such a heavy counter-battery fire from the well-protected Union guns on Golding's Plain that they are forced to withdraw. Toombs is ordered to advance on a given signal when the forces on his right open fire. He places his infantry brigade in positions in front of James Garnett's house, ready to advance whenever the signal is to be given. A few moments past 7 o'clock that evening, Toombs hears the signal shots from Confederate brigades opening fire to his right. Brigadier General Toombs immediately orders Colonel Edgar M. Butt of the 2nd Georgia to advance 7 of his companies, about 250 men, and have them take positions in the ravine in front and to the left of the James Garnett house, immediately in the rear of Toombs' advanced picket line. The 2nd Georgia attempts to deploy into skirmish line, but they are sighted by the pickets of the 6th Maine and come under sporadic fire. Burnham's pickets of the 6th Maine occupy a narrow strip of wheat field some 100 yards wide elevated above the ravine separating them from the 2nd Georgia pickets. For half an hour, the 2nd Georgia and 6th Maine engage one another in a heated firefight across the ravine. Meanwhile, Brigadier General Toombs busies himself bringing up the rest of his brigade. At 7:30, Toombs orders Colonel William M. McIntosh's 15th Georgia to Colonel Butt's aid in the ravine. Moving up on the 2nd's right flank, he commands Colonel Henry L. Benning in the 17th Georgia to move onto the left flank of the brigade battle line, and Colonel Jonathan B. Cummings' 20th Georgia on the brigade's right flank. Under heavy fire from the entirety of Toombs' brigade, the pickets of the 6th Maine fall back onto Hancock's main brigade line. Toombs' regiments advance to a crest in the wheat field separating them from Hancock's brigade, about 40 yards distant, and open fire with concentrated volleys. Hancock's regiments begin forming into a sturdy line of battle and return fire, but the soldiers of Toombs' brigade take cover behind the defilade of the hillcrest. Brigadier General John W. Davidson's 3rd Brigade, originally ordered to help Porter's 5th Corps at Gaines' Mill, has its orders countermanded, and Davidson's men move up in support of Hancock's 1st Brigade. The 33rd New York, with the 77th New York to its left, form to the right of the 49th Pennsylvania and begin firing into the front of the rebel battle line. Smoke begins to cloud the ravine in between the two lines as dust settles over the battlefield. At 8 p.m., Hancock is reinforced by elements of Brooks' Vermont Brigade. General Brooks rushes forward the 4th Vermont under Colonel Edwin H. Stoughton to shore up Hancock's battle line, while the remainder of the Vermont Brigade remains uncommitted. For the next hour, Toombs Brigade and Hancock's Brigade, reinforced by the 4th Vermont, continue a heated exchange of fire across the ravine. During the fighting, Colonel McIntosh is mortally wounded, relieving the command of the 15th Georgia to Lieutenant Colonel William T. Milliken. 2 regiments from G.T. Anderson's brigade detached earlier in the day by order of General Magruder, the 9th Georgia led by Colonel Richard A. Turnipseed, and the 1st Georgia Regulars under Colonel William J. McGill advanced into the woods on the left in the New Bridge Road, throwing out skirmishers and meeting the flank of the 5th Wisconsin in battle. The skirmishers of the 9th Georgia and 1st Georgia Regulars managed to dislodge the 5th Wisconsin from its position and drive it through its bivouac camp. The Georgians capture knapsacks, canteens, and other equipment before they are halted by the direct canister fire of batteries A and D, 1st New York Light Artillery. The 9th Georgia and 1st Georgia Regulars, taking casualties from the artilleries, withdraw back to the main battle line, retaining their position under the shelter of the woods until later withdrawn around midnight. With darkness shrouding over the battlefield at 9 p.m., both sides break off the engagement to continue the fight the next day. Toombs Brigade has suffered 271 casualties in its attack on Hancock's brigade around Garnett's Hill and the ravine on the 27th. Hancock's men suffered few losses. During the night of June 27-28th, Hancock's brigade falls back to their entrenchments along Golding's Plain. They continued to fortify their position all throughout the night, preparing for an attack by Toombs Brigade the next day. Hancock's brigade is further reinforced by the Vermonters and troops from Brigadier General George W. Taylor's 1st New Jersey Brigade of Henry Slocum's 1st Division. When the sun rises over Garnett's and Golding's farm on the morning of Saturday, June 28, 1862, Hancock's men are well situated behind their earthworks and prepared to repulse any attack on their lines. They are to cover the withdrawal of the rest of the 6th Corps and McClellan's change of base strategy. At sunrise, convinced from information received from a personal night reconnaissance that the Federals are preparing to evacuate their positions along the Chickahominy, Brigadier General D.R. Jones directs 5 of the long-range artillery guns attached to his division to open fire from the New Bridge Road on the fortified Union positions around the Golding House. Jones directs Brigadier General Toombs to seize advantage of any confirmed Union retreat by taking the Federals' right flank at Redoubt 6, which would open the way for emplacing artillery to fire on the retreating enemy. Having ordered Brown's and Moody's batteries into position near the overseer cabin and having made other dispositions for his division, General Jones rides to place batteries on the New Bridge Road to direct their fire and watch its effect. Observing the Federals' retreat in disorder under his artillery barrage, Jones dispatches his aide-de-camp, Captain Enan Thurston, to notify General Toombs of this fact while Jones himself goes to communicate with Major General Magruder. It is around 10 a.m. when confusion begins to rise in the ranks of Jones' division. Captain Thurston informs Brigadier General Toombs of the withdrawn Federal forces. Toombs, knowing from his earlier orders from Jones to take advantage of any Union withdrawal, tells Captain Thurston to send G.T. Anderson's brigade up in the support of his own in an attack on the Yankee lines. Captain Thurston relays the information to Anderson, who begins moving his brigade forward to support Toombs' attack. The 7th and 8th Georgia regiments are ordered to move at once to assist Toombs' brigade. As Jones meets with Magruder, he's informed that General Lee has commanded that no action be taken at the current moment against the retreating Federals while Lee ascertains their intentions. Magruder orders Jones to countermand his recent orders to Toombs, but it is too late. Toombs' brigade, with the 7th and 8th Georgia of Anderson's brigade in support, had moved for the attack on Hancock's brigade. At 11 a.m., Confederate artillery batteries from Lieutenant Colonel Stephen D. Lee's battalion and Major William Nelson's battalion commence a half-hour bombardment of William F. Baldy Smith's lines. Around 11:30, Toombs Georgians, with Anderson's 7th and 8th Georgia on the right flank, begin their advance across the ravine and up to Golding's Plain. When they near the entrenched Federals from Baldy Smith's division, they are met by a galling fire that staggers Toombs and Anderson's men. The Georgians manage to drive out the Yankees from their outer works on Golding's Plain. But the farther they advance, the more they draw fire from Baldy Smith's entire division, They face at least one of the strange, newly invented coffee mill guns in the lines of the 49th Pennsylvania around Redoubt 6. Seeing the 20th Georgia take mounting losses, Toombs calls for the 7th Georgia to move up and support their flank. The regiment moves up at the double quick with a cheer and advances to the right flank of the 20th. The 17th and 20th Georgia regiments maintain their lines despite coming under heavy fire from the 43rd New York and Battery D 2nd U.S. Artillery. During the assault, Colonel Lucius M. Lamar of the 8th Georgia is wounded and captured by the Federals. Lieutenant Colonel John R. Towers and the regimental adjutant, 2nd Lieutenant Armistead R. Harper, are captured by men of the 49th Pennsylvania, while Major E.J. Magruder is seriously wounded. Several other officers of the 8th Georgia are also badly wounded. In all, the 8th Georgia Infantry Regiment loses 13 men killed, 63 wounded, 6 missing, and 15 taken prisoner. The 7th Georgia, supporting the left of the 8th, takes similarly heavy casualties. Lieutenant Colonel William Wilkinson White is badly wounded. Captain Robert B. Hicks of Company H is wounded as well. The 7th Georgia Infantry Regiment suffers in all 7 men killed, 60 wounded, and 8 soldiers missing. Eventually, Toombs Brigade is forced to retreat in the face of such heavy crossfire. However, G.T. Anderson's brigade takes heavier losses, with the 7th and 8th Georgia becoming badly cut up in the retreat from Golding's Plain. The battle ends just after noon, with Hancock's brigade still holding their lines on the plain. The little skirmish on June 27-28 that becomes known as the Battle of Garnett's and Golding's Farm has incurred 189 losses for the Union and 438 casualties in total for Toombs and Anderson's Confederates over the 2-day affair. Although it is a minor skirmish, as well as the only notable action on Saturday the 28th, the Battle of Garnett's and Golding's Farm serves to fuel Major General McClellan's paranoia. Despite Hancock's repulse of Toombs and Anderson's attack, McClellan is not convinced that he's being attacked on both sides of the Chickahominy River. With the Battle of Garnett's and Golding's Farm being the only notable action to occur on June 28th, that Saturday is mainly used by the two armies as a day of respite from the previous 3 days' carnage. The commanding generals of the two opposing forces use the opportunity to calculate their opponent's next move. With the Army of the Potomac having abandoned its position along the Chickahominy and thus breaking contact with the Army of Northern Virginia, Lee must now wait for McClellan to make the next move. Union artillery guns controlling the key crossing points over the Chickahominy River make it virtually impossible for Lee to immediately pursue the Army of the Potomac. General Lee guesses that McClellan will make one of 3 moves on the 28th. The first is that McClellan might remain on the Chickahominy and fight for his railroad supply line to White House Landing, giving him the opportunity to still besiege Richmond. The second option is that McClellan might fall back down the peninsula, recrossing the Chickahominy further downstream and regaining his connection to the York River, effectively starting the campaign over again and giving him the opportunity to try once more to retake Richmond. Or option 3 could be that McClellan gives up his Chickahominy defensive line entirely and fall back towards the James River in the safety of his gunboat's protective fire. In order to ascertain McClellan's true intentions and whether or not he's really fallen back to the James, General Lee orders Richard S. Ewell's division and Jeb Stuart's cavalry brigade to move downstream to try and seize White House Landing and the railroad, and to observe the lower Chickahominy crossings. With the rest of his army, Lee will remain on the north bank of the river so as to be in the commanding position against either the first 2 possible movements by McClellan. In due course, Stuart's cavalrymen reach White House Landing and find it evacuated, with great piles of stores and forage left ablaze. McClellan is indeed heading to the James River and the safety of his gunboats. Meanwhile, the Army of the Potomac moves at a slow pace during its withdrawal towards the James River. The road network south of the Chickahominy and east of Richmond is poor, and there are relatively few north-south roads in this area since most of the roads go east-west towards Richmond. In order to reach the James, the Federals must fall back southeasterly some 6 miles. Then at the crossings of White Oak Swamp turn south. For most of the Yankee troops and the army, the march over these roads will be no more than 15 miles. Yet better than 3 days will be required for McClellan's entire army to cover the distance. This slow pace is partly due to the sheer size of the Army of the Potomac, 99,000 men with 281 field artillery guns and 26 heavy guns from the siege train, some 3,800 supply wagons and ambulances, and 2,500 heads of cattle. Another factor in the Army's slow pace, however, is its commanding general. McClellan insists that the Army of the Potomac use extreme caution in its deliberate and slow march to the James, ensuring to disengage from what McClellan believes is a Confederate army that far outnumbers his own force. As a consequence of the young Napoleon's misguided caution, Lee is granted for the opportunity to catch the Army of the Potomac on the march and destroy it. By dawn of June 28th, Union engineers from Brigadier General Daniel P. Woodbury's Engineer Brigade are in White Oak Swamp to construct crossings over the marsh. Before now, the swamp has served as the left flank anchor of McClellan's defensive line, and the bridges there had been cut. Now, the bridges have to be rebuilt to allow the Army to make its escape from Lee. The 50th New York Engineer Regiment is assigned to rebuild the White Oak Bridge, while a mile and a half upstream at Brackett's Ford, a new bridge is built by the 15th New York Engineer Regiment. By noon on the 28th, the lead columns of Keyes' 4th Corps are across White Oak Swamp, and the Army supply trains begin crossing next. During the afternoon, Porter's battered 5th Corps begins moving through the narrow corridor. Word quickly spreads through the Army's ranks that they are retreating, rather than it being a change of pace as McClellan had put it to his generals. General McClellan shifts his headquarters to Savage's Station on the Richmond and York River Railroad, and just after dark the order goes out for the 3 corps still holding the lines in front of Richmond must start pulling back down the railroad to a new position well beyond the old Seven Pines battlefield and in front of Savage's Station. These 3 infantry corps will compose a rearguard of half the Army of the Potomac to cover the White Oak Swamp crossings. McClellan also calls on Major General Ambrose E. Burnside to abandon all operations on the North Carolina coast and instead bring his division as reinforcements for the Army of the Potomac on the peninsula. Finally, the commanding general issues a circular letter to all commands ordering that everything not indispensable to the safety or maintenance of the troops must be abandoned and destroyed. This sacrifice, he says, is for the short season only, it is hoped. With the word now spreading through the ranks about the withdrawal being a retreat, McClellan's circular letter serves to demoralize many in the Army of the Potomac. Gloom starts to set in as General Lee's Army of Northern Virginia commences its pursuit of the Union Army in the early morning hours of Sunday, June 29th. The all-too-brief day of rest is over. For the remainder of the 7 days' battles, there will be non-stop combat along the front lines, culminating in concluding actions of the Peninsula Campaign.